So today it's the turn of harmony. This is a word that some people are a bit scared of. How do you create chords? What's it all about? As a keyboard player, if you're playing in a rock and pop band, you need to know all 24 main chords. That's 12 majors and 12 minor chords. Now, actually, you can get all of these if you arrange the notes in the correct order around the clock face, around the 12 hours of the clock face. And you can see that diagram part way through this video. And I'm not going to tell you where it is, so you have to watch. Okay. So, and I'm going to make it as high res as I can. So if you want to do a screenshot, you can do that, and you've got it as a reference point. So it's all based on a major scale. Now, what's a major scale? Well, actually, it's the first, at the moment, the earliest sound recording we know of a Frenchman who made a recording of a cornetist playing a C major scale onto a bit of paper with soot on it in 1857. So it's kind of fitting that that is the first recording that exists, because it is actually what harmony is all based on. So a C major scale does this. There are 8 notes in that scale, but the 1 and 8 are the same. You can assume that that and that note are the same. They are the same. So don't worry about the fact that that is higher up. It just sounds a bit higher than that one. That's fine. So using the diagram on the clock face, you look for your letter that you want, for example, C, and you look one step clockwise on that clock face, and you get to the letters G and E, shown as a pair on that clock face. And that gives you your chord of C. Now, the reason for doing it by thinking about the clock face is that you're thinking of the notes that make up that chord, not the shape on the keyboard. Lots of people know C as this, but they don't know it as this, or this, or that, or that. So the concept of a different shape on the keyboard is something to really get to grips with, because it actually makes it much easier to negotiate a chord sequence if you're not having to move around all the time. So, and I know this sounds silly, but the piano is designed by a human being for another one to play. The natural span being the first to the 8th note, or an octave. So that means you can find any of the other notes in between by just judging the distance between your thumb and your last finger. So you should be able to find any chord in existence within one area. So a C chord is C, E and G. Now that's C major. Now the word major is often left out, just because major, minor, they're hard to decipher, especially if you're the other side of a stage from somebody and they're going, you think, was that major or minor? So C major is just termed C. And you can play that chord anywhere on the piano. Low down, it's a bit muddy. But if you play it quiet low down, it's actually quite nice, quite effective. And if you spread those chords, I've got spread those notes. I've got 4 notes here, but I've actually repeated the C here, but I've got my G and E showing there. There we go. I could have this. Now for a major chord, Bach specified that you should not double the 3rd. What does he mean by that? Well, it's the 3rd note of the scale. It's the E here. So to have something like this, there's just too much of that component there. It doesn't sound as strong as this. You just need that one note there to convey the fact that you're playing a major chord. Now, that leads me on to minor chords. Using the clock face, first of all, find your major chord, C, E and G. And then the inner letter on the clock face diagram, which you'll see in just a second, specifies that you just move that note down by 1 semitone. What's a semitone? A semitone is the smallest distance that you can move on any modern musical instrument, or a fretted string instrument. Violin, you can tune anywhere between two notes. But on a piano, it's the shortest distance that you can move. On a guitar, it'd be 1 fret. So C minor is this. Now we've been conditioned over time to accept that the fact that this is happy and bright and optimistic, that is sad and pessimistic. You know, the funeral march doesn't go, it goes. Aside with some other chords, some other harmony in the left hand harmony. There's that word again. So every other chord, major chord and minor chord, can be reached very easily if you think of the letters rather than the shapes. So if I want to go to a G chord, let's say, G on the clock face, G, D and B. That involves a jump, and then I kind of didn't land on that G chord quite correctly. How about this? They're the same. G is that. All I've done is I've swapped the notes to make it easier to get to from my C chord. And there, it's effortless there. C to F. F is F, A and C, but you can just change it round so that it matches the area that you're currently in. So there are your major and minor chords. In the left hand on the piano, you would play a bass note, just to give it some depth, but you can also use what's termed the fifth in the bass, the fifth of your major scale. Notice how I was jumping about a bit there, but that's just to create the overall texture of something like that. But you don't need to move all that way. It's just a way of making it sound a bit more exploratory. So there we go. Now, my next video is going to be on other things, like people ask, what's a 7? What's a minor 7? That's just a bit more. But you'll see that in the next instalment.